Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. We're on the penultimate read up to Halloween review. I genuinely don't know how this has gone so fast. I definitely need to do more like this for various holidays. I'm already planned up to the end of this year, so I guess Valentine's would be the next holiday I can do. A little romance sojourn wouldn't be too bad. Well, actually, it could be a nightmare knowing the disparity of quality in that genre, but we've got time until we get there, and instead let's focus on books that are meant to be nightmares. So this week we're looking at Cuckoo by Gretchen Felker-Martin. Spoiler warning, and also this book covers topics of a few different forms of abuse and also homophobia, transphobia, and a healthy dose of the blood, guts, and nastiness that is a part of so many horror books. Viewer discretion is advised. You have been warned. Cuckoo is about a gay conversion therapy wilderness camp. If you know anything about the troubled teen industry in other places like the Anasazi camp in Utah, or it might be in Arizona. I know it's in one of the big, it's used a lot by Mormons, or the place that Bad Baby went to, linked to her experience with Dr. Phil, I believe. Then that's the kind of places that these kids are being sent to. As far as the parents are concerned, their kids get bundled into a van and come back as perfect little angels. Suddenly they're cis and straight and God's strongest soldiers, but some parents notice that something ain't right. The prologue takes place in 1991, where we see the aftermath of a girl coming back from camp. Her mother slowly realises that this isn't actually her daughter anymore, and things go horribly wrong. We then move to 1995 and follow a group of kids who work out what's happening in this place and form an escape plan. Something is changing the kids here, and they're being replaced with copies who just aren't right. This group that we're following in 95 is comprised of Shelby, who's a trans girl, Nadine and Joe, who are both lesbians, Malcolm, who's a gay man, Gabe, who is a gay man, but he is also an egg, aka somebody who is not aware that they're trans yet, but is, and will realise this in the near future. There is John, who is a queer man, and Felix, who is a quans man, and there is Felix, who is a trans man. Not all of them make it out in 1990. Not all of them make it out, but they do mostly make their escape. Several years later, in 2018, after years of Felix tracking this thing down, they reunite to finally put an end to things, and especially to help Nadine's younger sister, who was also sent to a camp after coming out as transgender. This now adult group comprises of Shelby, Joe, Mal, now out as non-binary, formerly Malcolm, Laura, now out as transgender, that egg has cracked, formerly known as Gabe. We also have John and Felix. They know they might not make it, but as long as this is brought to an end, then they'll go down swinging. I also, as you may have noticed there, I refer to formerly known as, I would not do this, were they real people, but it is useful in a book like this, in a review like this, talking about a book, to say this character has become this person. When you're reading the book, when you're reading about the past, you read about them with the name they had at the time, and then when we're in the, further along, when we're in 2018, we read about them with the new names. I may refer to them using both depending on what point of time I'm talking about. Again, I would not do this where they're real people, but they are fictional people, and this is already a large group of characters. I want to keep myself in line if I'm talking about chronology. This book, especially the prologue and the first part, is one of those where the horror is twofold. The story of abuse, fundy Christians, and conversion camps is already incredibly painful to read and is legitimately a horror in itself. Then you get the other side, which is the Cuckoo. If you know a story like Ted the Caver or the Magnus Archives episode Lost John's Cave, then you know the kind of vibe I'm talking about. With those two, we already have the horrors of cave diving, which is a mystifying hobby to me, and then you also have the extra supernatural element, and I feel icky and scared, and I'm pissing myself a little bit. There are so many real life fears in this book already, and Felker-Martin amplifies them with the supernatural elements so well. She also uses it to show that she really understands one of the major fundamentals of horror. A lot of the genre isn't really about the supernatural entity. Take Dracula as a figure, and he can be read as, say, a metaphor for the fear of immigrants, fear of queerness, fear of non-vanilla sexuality, or women being sexual beings and not sexual objects. The Cuckoo entity is this amorphous thing, which calling it a thing is kind of, because the thing, and it's kind of similar to that, but anyway, it's this amorphous thing that physically replicates people, but with the guidance of a kind of motherly, mistressy figure, turns these copies, quote unquote, into the kind of ideals that the parents think they want. As time passes, the copies only become higher in number and infiltrate all sorts of places, becoming things like cops, teachers, nurses, everyday people that you would pass in the street and never know. The Cuckoo spreads in the way that we see hateful rhetoric spreading. There's a section talking about how it's wormed its way everywhere. It had spread so far in the years since it had come to her. Its children were everywhere, on school boards and on naval bases, in churches and in hospitals. What it loved best, though, was the home. In a home, it could draw the blinds, lock the doors, and do its work in private. The tendrils of hate worm into all sorts of places, but it is truly in the home where that hate is most effective at spreading. Trusting partners and malleable children can be morphed into new forms of hateful beings in their own right without anybody else seeing a change. This is also a place that you, as it were, cannot see. It is harder to change and something that you can't question as easily. Leaders, cops, broadcasters, you see them and their problems in the open. They're public figures, they're public servants, and they are just that, public. There's something that can be tangibly done with these people, be it protests, voting, petitions, searching out reform, but everyday people behind closed doors, it's far more difficult to get to these people, and those who spread hateful rhetoric know this. They know their career might be pretty fragile. They know that it really is inherently fragile as societies change. But if they're changing minds to be like theirs, then it is worth it to them. They may be too far one way or the other as things become more radical, especially if they're grifting, they don't really believe things. That is really a fragile thing. But if they're making money and changing minds to make people more like them, to make them make more money, then that's all that's important. It is much easier to lure people in with hate than it is with the idea of changing people's minds to become less hateful and to try and rid people of these hateful ideals. And Felker-Martin uses this spreading of hate so well, with also talking about the abuse that children sent to these kind of camps go through, both at the camps and at home. Because let's be real, no non-abusive parent would think to send their child to a place like this, be it a Pray the Gay Away type place or somewhere with the troubled teen industry. Nobody leaves that place the person they were when they were sent in, if they even get to leave at all. Looking at those in this book who were there in 1995 when our group are, those filled with the kind of self-hate that leads conservative politicians into rent boy scandals are usually the ones being taken by the Cuckoo first. They're the ones who are going on to become counsellors at these camps and are happy to take on that kind of Synanon type role, if you know anything about that, where they have the children dish out the punishment to each other. And that's before they're even changed. They're happy to dish out those kind of punishments. They're not forced into that idea. These people are easy for it to change because there isn't too much to change. We also have the unnoticed types, who are also really susceptible to change. They're less noticed by their peers, so when they're altered, it takes time for them to be seen. They may also be naively trusting of the adults around them, and with enough of that mind-altering training, they can be easily moved away to be replaced. These two groups represent those who come away from these kind of camps believing what they've been told. The ones who are definitely cis now, they're definitely straight now, and there are no repressed urges whatsoever. They don't want to be gay anymore, they don't want to be trans anymore, because that was definitely a choice. This usually results in the first group, the sort of naturally a little more conservative anyway types, becoming the kind of people that take on that hatred, take it inwards, and then spew it out. It is don't look at me, I'm not like them kind of people. It is queer people, people of colour, anything like that vote against their own rights, basically. People in the UK who fit into those categories voting conservative. It is people like that in America voting for Republicans. It's all that kind of thing where it's just like, they hate you, right? It's your Blair Whites. She would fit into this kind of thing. And then with the second group, they take that out on themselves. They may walk out of these camps, but given that they won't have had any real therapy to deal with these feelings, they might not make it too much further in the future if they don't realise what's happened and make it to proper help. But there are people that leave these kind of places. They still know that they are who they say they are when they get there. They're still queer, they're still trans. I mean, Laura discovered that she is trans at gay conversion camp, which is kind of funny, let's be real. Like, gay conversion camp, we come here and convert you into a gay. The group, barring Nadine, do make it out through sheer determination and grit, and not without harm. They are all deeply scarred adults. We see this with real life whistleblowers. They're full of strength in taking these kind of figures and places down, but they should never have had to be strong in the first place. The group fighting this thing in adulthood really is akin to whistleblowing, just in a far more violent, explosive way. But this is, of course, an allegory, so it's not going to be a one-for-one comparison. But if you know anything about these kinds of places, then you know that not every child gets to walk out. Reform schools, wilderness camps, conversion therapy retreats, all of them have a death toll attached to them. The abuse these places dole out has killed a huge number of children, more than we will ever know. From the moment we meet Nadine, we can see that she is probably only exiting this book one way: kicking, screaming, and probably not alive. No matter when it happened, she was likely to die given her explosivity, and leaders in groups like this do tend to go out in a way that pushes others forward. Talking about in fictional media, like as the group are leaving the small house on the edge of the encampment, making their escape, the Cuckoo gets a hold of Nadine, and it is too late. There's already a blazing fire happening, and she is trapped firmly in the Cuckoo's grasp. It gives the others time to escape, but it is obviously still incredibly hard for them. The kids who speak up, stand out, and don't back down in places like this are the ones who will be punished the worst in order to be made an example of. And she does experience this a little earlier in the novel. She is made to pull her trousers down, and she is whipped with a belt in front of everybody else. Aside from the allegory here as well, I do just love the way she was written out of the book. She gets a real hero's death, and it is deservedly so. She physically fought her way to get everybody out, and if she isn't going to make it, then she's going to try to take this thing down with her. And of course, it is only fitting that it's her younger sister that gets sent to this camp, because their parents lost one child to this place, but are perfectly happy to repeat the cycle because they're too full of hate to realise that it could happen again. Why care about trying to understand the people your children are growing up to be when you can instead hate who they fundamentally are and ship them off to get them killed? People like these parents will never learn unless the issue is killed off and cannot be a quote-unquote solution anymore. This is what Felker-Martin is talking about when she says this thing thrives best in the home. Almost all of these kids are abused in some form before ever getting shipped out to this place. The hate is already there. Sending them to a greater source of that hate to make them better is obviously going to make sense to these hateful parents. Horror as an allegory is a long-standing tradition, and Gretchen Felker-Martin gets it. On top of that, the gross and squishy body horror is top tier, and there were parts of this that genuinely made me gag. It was grade A grim, and her characterization work also works really well. Even if I did find Gabe absolutely insufferable, Lara is more likable, but I guess it is incredible what figuring yourself out can do. She also works well with the way the characters' relationships function here, be it platonic, sexual, or romantic. She's got a clear understanding of the way different kinds of relationships function, especially looking at the ways in which toxic relationships function and the way people just get worn down by them. Later on in the book, in that final part in 2018, Mal has previously been with John. They've split up because Mal was kind of toxic to him, but then has ended up in a toxic relationship themselves where the other person is just constantly wearing them down. They're the sort of person where it's like, oh, well, I can't do anything right then. I'm the bad guy. I'm the worst. I guess I should just do this. I guess I should just do that. And they are the sort of person that will threaten to end themselves in order to get a reaction out of you. And I just want to say, if that is the sort of person that you're with, it's not on you. Or if you're a friend to that sort of person, if they're constantly threatening it, if they are not willing to try to get proper help, and they're constantly and I don't mean saying that I have feelings where I want to do this. I mean they're constantly threatening, I'm going to do this because of you. That kind of thing. If you break up with me, I'll do it. Break up with them. If they do that, that's not your problem. Because it is not your fault that they are not emotionally mature enough for a relationship. Because if you behave like that, you're not. And it could be something that is like their mental health makes them behave like that, but that only is so much of an excuse. You have to be a little bit callous when people are threatening things like that. It's hard, and obviously I'm not an expert, but I have dealt with it, and you do just sort of have to be harsh in a way. You kind of have to go, okay, I'm gonna try and maybe, if you do really care about this person, it's fair enough to want to go, I want to get you help. If they are not willing to accept it, and I mean real help, not you, then you have to leave. Because when somebody acts like that and says, I'm gonna kill myself if you break up with me, then leaving is the right thing to do, because they're not actually threatening to kill themselves. They're just trying to trap you and keep you around. And I sound like a horrible bastard when I say that. I'm aware of that, but it's true, unfortunately. As you get older, you sort of realise that some people just don't know how to behave. I don't know how else to say it. But I will say, I do have a couple of issues with it still. Personally, I found the ending a little bit rushed. It wasn't bad, and I certainly still enjoyed the novel as a whole, but I just wish we'd spent a little more time with the thing we've been leading up to the whole book. There are characters, one in particular, who die off in the final section, who go out way too quickly and deserved that kind of Nadine send-off. It's not that they can't die quickly, but it was just like, it's mentioned and it's done. And I'll also say that there is some sexual activity throughout the book, but especially while they're at the conversion camp, which it would be fine to mention that there is sexual activity happening, but personally I feel like she just goes into too much detail with it, given not a single one of the characters in our group is 18 yet. It made me feel kind of gross reading it. It's not written like erotica or anything. It's clearly not meant to be like, read this for titillation, but I found myself being like, I don't need to know all of that. But if you are looking for more queer fiction in general and queer horror in specific, then this is certainly something to seek out. I'll likely look into more of her work in the future, but that'll be when I'm intentionally looking for horror again. I can't lie, once this is done, I will be taking a little break. It's a great genre with a lot of stories to tell, but it is a lot when it's all you're reading. At least for me. Like, the stuff I have planned for the rest of the year, I don't think any of it is horror, as far as I'm aware. Some of it might be, like, have some elements of it, but it's not, as far as I'm aware, explicitly horror. And at the very least, I know there will be a couple of breaks before I get to anything that might be. But next week is our last book in the read up to Halloween, where we'll be looking at Hell House by Richard Matheson, who you may know for I Am Legend, which was actually one of the first books I ever reviewed. I think it's either number 2 or number 3, back when I was doing this as a blog. Loved it, obviously. It's a classic for a reason. But let me know what horrors you've been diving into this spooky season down in the comments below. Also, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and feel free to ring that notification bell, all the cringe shit I'm supposed to ask you to do in my videos. But most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take good care of yourself. Right.